We're going to be drawing 3 different styles of the letter V. With only 2 pen strokes, it's one of the most simple letters in the entire alphabet. But how do we take it from basic to a fully electrified piece? Let's get into it. Alright, I think we should start in with the straight letter style. So what I like to do is give mine like a little bit of an arc to it, and then put like a big ear off to the right side here. I'll also kind of keep the bottom pretty flat there, and what I really rely on is this point in the center to make sure that it's really representative of a V and doesn't really get too confused with like a U shape. And then I also find, the top edge on the right, if I keep those edges like really nice and square, it helps benefit the kind of V atmosphere. And this time around, I wanted to use paint markers so we could actually do a little bit of like cutbacks and whatnot when we get finally down to the piece style. So hopefully that is a new material this time around. And I forgot to double check the username, but big shout outs to the recommendation on the letter V here. I'll drop the comment on screen, and if you guys want to be first, jump in on what letter can be next time, just drop a comment, and whoever gets in there first and make it a unique letter, I'll be sure to feature it next time around. It was really fun practicing on the V ahead of this video. I was reminiscing over some different styles that I've visited. I've used it in my name for many years now, so it's got a lot of different work from different styles just in my passing, so it's been fun to kind of refine that to like my favorites of all of it. And here we are with kind of the straight letter style. So this is kind of like something simple. I'd rip this if I'm drawing a name or something. It stands that it's kind of bold enough to be either like the first letter or a supporting letter in a name. The only really change I make is maybe I'll put that ear on the left side if it's the first letter in a name, just trying to fill out some extra space. But I pretty much keep this quick rip for all things included, and I'll make sure to try to get a nice point down here so we keep the V style going. I'll keep my edges up here nice and square as well, so it gets a little tab but nothing too crazy. And then hit a little 3D off to the right here. We can see it nice and bold. And yeah, there'll be some more complexities as I even get to like the throwy next, but for my straight letter style, sometimes it feels like if I just keep it kind of simple, the V is really legible and easy to find. You can kind of overdo it if you try to add too much to the straight letter style. It kind of just likes to be a smooth couple lines here, nothing too crazy. Might square this off a little bit, see if we can get that to sell. Didn't quite like how the point was looking. Now we gotta complement our line thickness elsewhere. Alright, yeah, that's working. The paint marker is eating up the printer paper a little bit here, but there you go. Super basic style, nothing too crazy, but gets you a nice kind of cut V into the center here, and then you get the little ear off to the side to make sure you get a little bit extra emphasis. And now for the throwy, I actually like to do multiple ears. I like to do one on either side, so I'll do a nice big one on the left as like a introduction to the letter, make sure you see a lot of it, and then I'll kind of maybe offset the next one a little bit lower and include it there. I'll stop here just so you can see what I've also done. I've also opted to include kind of more of like a triangle shape down there. The fact that the throwy is so rounded, if we didn't have that, we really run the risk of looking more like a U shape. So what I like to do is really kind of overdo it, make sure you know for sure, and then I'll actually follow this angle on the right side here with all of the kind of triangle shapes so that it's consistent and I don't have to have some like aggressive point at the bottom to tell you it's a V. That's personal preference. I've seen plenty of people that make a pointy bottom look good, but some of the other letters in my name don't really benefit from that, so I like to have a little bit of a rounded style down there, all while kind of trying to find the V's flavor elsewhere in the structure. So mess around with that. You know, the 2 years here, you know, I might even make this one a little bit wider so it goes beyond this section of the bottom half, and that just is a extra way to really fan that out to make sure the V is kind of capitalized up here. And even though like you really only have 2 lines to the V, it's one of the fun letters where as you start adding features to it, it receives them well, I guess. You know, it's really one of those letters that has the opportunity that you can add a bunch to it. And if you keep some things typical, right, like that really cut triangle at the bottom, you can get away with a lot. You know, you can obviously overdo it, but I find that it's one of the letters that almost likes to be styled extra hard and overdone a little bit without much loss of the opportunity that you're gonna kind of lose the letter structure, because you kind of always have to come back to that point. I'm running loose on the juice here. We'll see if this pink holds up all the way through. Maybe I'll just hit it with a second pass. I don't know, it looks pretty good on camera. I can just see the streaks coming through, and I'm sure you can hear them. That is the one downside of paper and paint marker. Sometimes it starts like pilling up the paper, and you end up having bits of paper like loose on top of your color. These ones are doing pretty good, but I worry that it'll get it super saturated and a little bit too wet. And then when I do my throwy outline, I normally like to focus on keeping my pen really vertical on the outline. This will help keep the width of the outline super consistent. You don't end up rolling the barrel too much, and then you end up with, you know, some lines that are thin, some lines that are thick. And with the paint marker as well, you tend to have a lot more friction than pencil for sure, and ink markers as well. So if you take your time here, you'll get a really smooth line, and you won't be fighting that friction as much, because I feel like when I go fast, the friction, I'm kind of thrown off by it a little bit more. And you'll see here I'm got to break my lines up into some smaller sections just to make sure they kind of land. But ideally you'll be able to learn this and go around just with one pass. I'm still fighting the pink. It's a little wet still, so we'll let that dry up as we kind of add some 3D here, and we can correct it up. So I don't know, paint markers as well, opportunity to learn some extra patience. I probably could have given it a full minute in between the fill and the first outline here, because you can see I've streaked it. But nothing we can't do a second layer on, which is also the benefit of paint markers. You don't have to worry that you can't correct a little bit of a misdrawn line. And yeah, let me know if this translates as a V, because sometimes when the V is standalone, I even lose the chance to make sure it really is distinguished from a U. But I'll lean back on my little triangle down here. I'm making sure I've got some nice pressure on the page. That helps me overcome the friction. Yeah, you can see the skipping there. That's too much pressure, so it's a kind of a delicate balance of getting the marker going without it going too hard, and then you end up with a really sketchy line. But I don't know, just the extra dark that actual paint marker has on the paper makes these, you know, just, I don't know, pop that much extra. Sweet. So those are my like two go-to styles. Like with the throwy here, you could add, you know, another ear on the left side of the straight letter. Definitely have fun with it. You know, these angles can change a ton, and now that we go into the piece, we'll see that you'll get a chance to go kind of crazy with how exquisite the overall shape of the V can be. You know, here we have pretty much two uprights on both styles. I'm gonna change that a lot here. So buckle up, we've got a wild style incoming. So I'll keep my my approach kind of similar. So I'll go for like my V style. All right, so this is really wide. I'm gonna kind of exemplify the width of the V at this point, and then I'm going to start adding like some different angles to my left and right side. So here, pretend this is my left stroke, right? I'm coming in, I'm jogging out, right side jogging out. So now I've kind of have, you know, two lines to what was once just a single line on the straight letter. And then something I really like to ensure with my letters is that I go and start from one point, and as if I'm drawing just that original V line, my end point for that line is going to be kind of in line, and the same for my right side here. So my end point of this line, as if I'm drawing it down to my point, those two will follow the same line. Granted, it jogs left and right quite a bit, but at least you're coming back to center on the V style. I find that as long as I maintain that, you're going to find a V shape out of it. And kind of like I was mentioning earlier, the V can be over complex for no reason, because you can take so many liberties with it. So keep that in mind. You can definitely overdo it and get kind of wild with it, and as long as you kind of come back to a center point, you can cheat away and make a V style out of anything. When I'm styling mine with other letters around, I can even, you know, get a little bit overkill with what I'm doing, so I can rely on the idea that like my other letters will inform you that the whole word says SIVE, but that when it's a solo letter can kind of get overdone. So I'm gonna, believe it or not, keep this a little bit on the simpler side. You know, sometimes I go really wild with mine, and that's only a benefit of kind of coming later into the other letters that can help you get there. Because I don't know, without other letters, you run the risk of it just kind of looking like a mass of graffiti, which isn't the end of the world. You know, sometimes I'll put like an eyeball in the middle of my V and, you know, crisscross it a couple times, but that, when it's just a V letter, is, I think, a little counterintuitive for kind of this tutorial style. So we're gonna still get wild here, but one of those extra opportunities that if you check some of the other styles I've drawn in the past, you can see I get a little bit heavy-handed with my features. Cool, so we're just kind of thickening the lines now. Since we went kind of extra wide on this guy, I like to make kind of my ends a little bit chunkier. So another opportunity here, I like a shape like this where you kind of get in the triangle shape off to the edge, and I don't know, it kind of gives it like a shoulder to the letter. But I'll make that really thick and wide, and then as I come back to the center, it'll kind of taper in. And I think that really comes from like the fact that I stretched the structure wider, right? Like here we're an inch wide, but I'm like three letter chunks wide down at the bottom here. And so that means everything that's on kind of the horizontal should grow a little bit, and have the opportunity to grow, I guess. You know, it will still look in place if you stretch those components a little bit. So I find that that gives some extra gusto to the V here if you really make sure the wider features are stretched wide. I could probably thicken this area up down at the point. Same with this line. Just looking at it saying, you know, this is really extra skinny, so probably make that a little bit wider. Okay, yeah, maybe I'll keep that small little vertical corner there just to keep the, you know, you reading up and down kind of style to it. Cool. So you've got what I would call a pretty wild style V here. And the only thing I would really add from here are like extra hookups and whatnot. Right now, this structure is beyond more complex, right? If you were to look at the center of this, the line goes all over, jigs and jogs. And so I'm going to follow that style with some like arrows and hookups here. And what I like to do is pull to the center a little bit. So one of my favorite extra add-ons is just another diagonal pointing down to your point here. And then maybe we'll come over here and kind of cut back and up again this way. So this line could almost be like an alternate route down to the point in the center. So let's see what that kind of looks like a little bit thicker. And that kind of flares out, and I almost think of these almost like maybe like feathering the top. So I'm going to get another point that's really similar to this little piece here. And the V, it for whatever reason does well with that. You know, it's another line that's pointing down to the middle, and I don't know if it's like if you were to draw a V and draw a V right inside of it, kind of that reason that you can still distinguish it as a V. You know, no other letter in the alphabet quite has just things coming to a point like that. I feel like that's one of the reasons I like to add extra pieces like this or over here, is just so you get more V. You know, you're doubling up, you're getting the second one in there. And then here we can add even some like arrows and stuff to it. I oftentimes punch them out to the right and left, and I was thinking we could do like a more of like a classic hookup style, so keep it really square. This is like old school New York wild style, where I'll keep the arrow like perfectly uniform. Maybe we'll go a teeny bit longer. How's that look? And I'm just coming off, you know, this end of the line here, perfectly vertical. And then since we got a left guy, we should do one off to the right here. I might stretch this one a little bit lower. I don't want, one thing I don't like is if arrows are like perfectly in line, so I'm going to bring this one a little bit lower here. And we can shoot it off to the right instead. And that way, if you were to read across, you know, you come over here, and if you're looking at both arrows, it at least forces your eye to move a little bit. And needless to say, I guess, the the width of this V is crazy right now. You know, if you have another letter in here, you might not put an arrow going right through it, because now you've got a really wide stretched V. So your other letters are going to have to be pretty wide too if you follow suit. But not the end of the world if that works for your name. Maybe we can do a bit off to this guy. Not a ton of room to fit one in there, but I think I'll do it anyways. I kind of like having those a little symmetric. And since we have kind of two hookup styles, you know, we got one here, maybe we do a third hookup off this guy. And maybe we won't do this as an arrow. Maybe we can just leave this as a box. So with hookups, you can kind of just keep them square. And I'll keep the dimensions similar to the ones I made for the arrows. But this will just be kind of an offshoot of the letter here. Yeah, that'll be a good chance, and we can put like a bit on the end of it instead of an arrow. And I'll offset my bit a little bit lower, kind of call back to my offsets over here. Maybe we'll do a half moon. I've done a half moon in every video, so dare we keep it consistent and not break it? Now that we're juiced, I'm gonna double up on some of these lighter. And this will provide some good opportunity to do some overlapping of the letter, pick who takes priority. Does it still look like a V to you guys? For me, I find that I can always see a V nicely, but I don't know. It could be a Y. You could easily go more Y vibes if you want. So steal some of the styles here for your other letters if you need. Cool. So now we've got the opportunity to outline ourselves a little bit. With paint markers, it is good. You know, I was defaulted jumping over here on the right side of the letter. It is good to work left from light, especially. Oh my gosh, it is good to work left from right because when your paint marker is wet, you're going to find it on the back side of your hand, and especially with a piece, you're going to be going back and forth a few times. So I'm going to intentionally start over here on the left and kind of be a little bit of a printer and just work my way across. Hopefully not smear it too bad. Got a little bit of paper buildup there. Let's see. I think it might be cool to tuck this behind the original V, and just that'll help distinguish that guy was secondary. The real main structure is this first one we did. Cool. And let's come across here. I probably will kind of feather that line out so that when we come in, it'll slowly integrate with the rest of the V here. Okay. Before we go too far, and then, yeah, this hookup will be interesting. See what that looks like in front. And with paint markers, we can always cut back, but I like to try to get it right the first time over. Nice. I was worried that line was going to come down a little sketchy. Change the angle of that a little bit, make sure it's kind of going off to the right a touch more. I don't know, I feel like the lines are getting a teeny bit cleaner the faster I'm going. Get a little bit more of a perfect straight edge to it. So maybe some speed on your side is not the worst thing. Oh my god, we forgot. How we forget that guy. I don't know, maybe I just need to work on my penmanship so that I can draw slowly and accurately at the same time. I'm trying to pull as straight as I can there. Alright, alright. That's looking pretty good. Just a couple bits. This, the outline, the black, is a little chunky, but I don't know, I think it gives a cool style to it. Sweet. Some, I think I'll come take that line a little bit further over. And now let's hit it with some 3D. We can almost do a little bit of a vanishing point down here. Don't have a ton of room to do kind of, maybe we got enough room for that. Let's see what. With the kind of hookup style here, having a really linear 3D complements it nicely. It, you know, when you have the vertical nice and squared up, it's very pleasing to the eye to see that in the 3D as well. So I'm just going to keep, I think, everything on the 45 here. Oh, we could do, yeah, maybe this time around we'll do like some piano keys or something in the 3D. Help sell our geometry a bit. Yeah, especially like down here when you get a flat bottom. It's like, that just feels right. I don't know. Not much on that part. Same here. Don't get too tempted up on these edges to put more 3D there than is true. It can be easy to try to make that more like a horizontal, but don't get tricked. Oh shoot, I should stop filling those in. I forgot. I wanted to do some piano styles. Okay, sweet. So the piano style I was mentioning, if you follow your 45 and just occasionally change whether or not it's a, you know, a white stripe or a black stripe, or how thick that stripe is, you end up getting this kind of like halftone effect. It can look really cool to really draw the direction of the 3D in there. This is probably one of the easiest accents to a 3D style. And so here I've got a bunch in there that kind of look all evenly spaced, so maybe I'll fill that one in and fill that one in, so it gives some variety to how thick the black section is versus the white section. And I'll even do it in sections that are kind of hidden in there. You see it coming together? I think we have just enough to, and it's sometimes, you know, like getting a super thin black versus the general thickness, or even cut in a really skinny white section. That's how I really like to change up the variety. And here, like, all of a sudden this section looks like it's all too much of the same size. So I'll cut a couple of those back even after the fact. now I'm really running the risk of smearing. Oh, can't forget our edge over here. Try to pick a section that I can kind of prop my hand up a little bit. I'll be interested to see what letter we get to style up next. And I didn't really see any comments about like style suggestions, but feel free, leave, not only letters, but maybe even if someone beat you to picking the letter, leave some style suggestions. Like, these are kind of my styles of straight letter throwing and whatnot, but if there's a certain style that you're stuck on or want to learn, definitely let me know, because it can be fun. I can study up a little bit and see what I'd suggest. Because I guess, yeah, this is somewhat a pseudo New York style with the more straight edge hookups, but not inherently much different than my normal style here. Yeah, this thing's getting a little wonky. I might exemplify that a little bit. I feel like this would benefit from a little bit higher stretch here. See how good our, and honestly, a little bit thinner. That feels a little thick. See if we can hide that. That helped a little bit. Cool, cool. All right, I stashed some blues off to the side. I thought it would be cool to give a little force field. And this, with the paint markers, also helps square your corners. So I can cut back my black outline a little bit, and now you get like a super square edge to the black. You'll have a little bit more rounded of an edge now in the blue, but it can be a little bit more forgiving in the force field if it's rounded versus having that perfect corner on the black section in the outline. So I would much prefer a perfect outline and a slightly rounded force field. And I too, well, I can cover up some of our mistakes in here. Yeah, it cleans it up just a touch. Oh yeah, the opacity on this blue is good. I can correct that 3D that we messed up earlier. That is a happy accident there. Uh-oh, I felt my first bit of pressure on wet paint. Hopefully everyone's enjoying watching the paint dry, because I know I am. We'll have to correct our wet paint, but hopefully that's the worst of it. And now that I've let this pink dry a little bit, I feel like while I'm working on other sections, I always try to remind myself to double back on sections that needed cutbacks, because you can let it dry while you work on other stuff. I think I'll just go back to pink for a little while before we get, because you can kind of keep going with the blue, right? Like, nothing's wet in your way there. But while the pink might take a couple layers to get going, could be valuable to spend my time now. This hookup's interesting. I was hoping maybe we need like, maybe we need like a teeny bit more pink up here. Like, it didn't seem to integrate perfectly. Yeah, so that's a good opportunity for, I'll kind of rough that in, and then I'll let it dry, and I'll do a second coat once it's dry. Once we've finished watching it dry, get a second coat on there. But yeah, that's one of the fun process pieces with changing up your materials a little bit, is it forces you to think about your approach to the piece. You know, if I was just doing this with graphic markers every time around, you can kind of get complacent with how you're actually producing the artwork, and that's a fun piece that I like to put my mind on, is, you know, how do you get the process going so you can, you know, do it efficiently and have fun while you're going through. Because, I don't know, when you get to that flow state of like, oh, this color, that color, this color, that's when I'm having the most fun piecing and sketching. And so if you can get your process down and refined a little bit, you can stay in that flow state a little bit longer. You can kind of hop around a little bit and it not feel totally disjointed, and that you're kind of spazzing on it. So now some of the black sections that got overrun by the dark blue, I think could just use a little bit of extra help here. Oh, honestly, the blue is, like, I like to do like almost like a lightning style with it. Maybe we could do some wavy lightning. Could even probably crisscross over our piece here. Tuck it in. Have it go like within the 3D and back around. Honestly, not much thought to this. I'm just kind of doing some wavy styles. And I don't know if you saw the light blue off to the side, but we could complement that. And I like to, with my like lightning styles, I won't follow the path like 100%. I'll have like the dark and light kind of train around each other. And too, this will let you see it a little bit better into the black of the force field. Maybe just some like splatters too. Alright, that's looking pretty sweet. Back to pink layups. I honestly kind of hid that a little bit. Cheating where you can. by all means valid. Cool. All right, that's looking solid. Should we do the service of the other two V's with some blue around them as well? And we'll do an electric blue on one and the ocean blue on the other. I'm struggling with the friction there, but it came out even. Whatever works. Cool. I don't know where that ended up. I could have used this before when I was trying to correct my corner here. What were we thinking? Alright, gotta be careful not to drag this late in the game. Nice. You love when the line works out over such a long distance. Felt like all of those had like 2 dots around the one big one. Need some variety. Okay, come on. Final call on this pink. Oh no, I'm wiping up the previous ones. We're really gonna sit here and watch this thing dry. That came out nice. I really like that style there. Alright. If I look hard enough, it'll dry faster, right? I find sometimes with paint markers too, if you are really faint on your pressure, you can kind of like paint it on top. And it gives it a little bit better opacity rather than pushing it down into the previous layer. Because I feel like the previous, like the lower layer of paint will get pulled up a little bit if you use too much pressure. But if you're really soft on it, you can get some really high opacity. You just can't, I don't know, do much more than a single stripe or two. Awesome. Well, I think we did it. Hopefully it was just as fun for everybody else as it was for me practicing up on the letter V. That's going to do it for me. Peace. What's up? I would have waited to do this if you were going to be gone.
Yeah, I gotta do my massage. I gotta brush my hair.
Good luck.